So this workshop is going to be focusing on strategies for effective online learning. And that couldn't be more relevant in the time that we're living in right now. So what I'd like to do is just go over 5 simple strategies that people might not think of when they're starting this journey of learning online. Um, so with online learning, we know that it offers a lot of really great opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have. So first of all, you're going to have a lot more flexibility than you would have had otherwise, which is great. You can decide on when and where you study, but you can also eliminate that daily commute and save a lot of time. And the other thing is, if you're going to university and studying online, you're going to have classmates all over the world doing their class at the same time that you are. And so it really offers a variety of rich perspectives, which is a great thing. Now, of course, there's going to be challenges. And, as a student, your roles and your responsibilities are going to change. And so are your instructors' roles and responsibilities. And both parties really need to be a lot more self-motivated. And the other challenge is that there are fewer opportunities to really connect with the people that you're in class with. So that's going to be another focus of the presentation, is learning how to make those absolutely necessary connections that make your online learning experience that much richer. So let's get started, if I can, with a small poll. So I would like to know how many people who are live with me today have taken an online class before. So just click yes or no. All right, we've got one no. Oh, here we go. Let's give it another try. All right, so it looks like we have a lot of no's so far. So I guess we have a little bit to learn in this workshop. Here we go. So we have, oh, sorry, I keep on closing it and reopening it because I think it's finished. Let's give it a second. All right. So it looks like we are at about half and half, just a little bit more saying no. Actually, I'm pretty new to online courses too. I've taught them, but I only took my first one, I would say a couple of months ago, and it was a weird class to do online because it was all about wine tasting. So it made wine tasting very difficult if you're trying to share your experience. So give me a moment. Yeah, we're at 50-50 now, which is kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to tell you about the 5 strategies that we're going to focus on today in this presentation. The first and most basic is knowing your online learning platform. The second is establishing a study space with the people around you in mind, so if you live with others. The third is creating a study space suited to your learning style. And this is sometimes not something that we think about, is our learning style and trying to create a space that's conducive to the way we learn best. The fourth is effective online communication. Very different from face-to-face, very important. And then the last is making those very necessary connections with both your course and your classmates. So, first and foremost, knowing your online learning platform. Now, at Dalhousie, we use Brightspace, but all universities have many different platforms to choose from, such as Blackboard, Moodle, and they all serve the same purpose. So your online learning platform is going to be meant for your instructor to communicate with you and vice versa, and for your instructor to deliver content to you. All right, so as you can imagine, it's very, very important that you know how to use it. Most of them, luckily, have lots and lots of tutorials online that are free and accessible, and you can learn everything that you need to from those tutorials. And at Dalhousie, those are accessible right on the home page of your course, so you'll be able to find those tutorials very easily. Now, the next thing that's really, really important is establishing your study space, because it's not in the classroom anymore. It's either at your home or somewhere else where you can sit down with your laptop and get your work done. But when you're not in school and you don't have that defined space, you might be in another space where you need to share with others. So there are 3 important questions that you can ask yourself before you establish your study space. Firstly, what is your living situation? So do you have roommates? Do you have your family at home? Secondly, where in that space can you comfortably study, where you have access, of course, to a power outlet and the types of things you need to run your laptop? And then finally, what are the people in your shared space doing during your study time? One of the complications that I've run into as an instructor at Dal is that students are working at home, using their internet, and their families, because of the pandemic, are also working from home. So the internet connection gets weaker and weaker, and sometimes they can't use video. And this isn't a big deal, but it does become a big deal if you have an exam that needs to be written in a certain designated period of time. So working out the complications and having these conversations with the people who you share your space with, it's really important. And it's easy to not think about it when you're just going into an online class for the first time, because it's not something that, comes to mind immediately, but it will make your experience a lot smoother if you have these have these conversations beforehand and establish what time you are going to be studying and when you need the space. Now, the next thing that I'd like to talk to you about is actually creating a space or establishing a space that works well for your learning style. So a lot of people learn in different ways. We have different learning styles. And on the simplest level, we have kinesthetic, reading, writing, visual, and auditory. So we are going to do a really quick poll to see how the people who are watching prefer to learn. So here we go. You should be seeing the poll in just a moment. And you can go ahead. So how do you learn best? When you read and write something, when you listen to something, when you see a visual representation like a picture or a chart or a graph, or when you use your hands to do something or move. Now, Most people are a combination of a few of these, but just for fun, let's see what you are. All right. Now in the chat, is my poll visible? Okay. There we go. Thanks for your answers. It looks like we have a couple now. And it looks like we have pretty even distribution across all of the learning styles. All right, so I'm going to show the results now. All right, so we have one person who is a reader and a writer, another who's a listener like me. I always prefer to listen to things as opposed to reading them. And then we have one more person who's a visual learner. Now, knowing what type of learner you are can really have an impact on what kind of study space works well for you. And I noticed someone in the chat, Led, says that they have a balanced learning style. And the way I understand that is maybe you have a mix, and that's completely normal. Not many people are just one specific learning style. Yeah, and Rodrigo is saying that they like representations and they can be really, really helpful. And sometimes, depending on what you're studying, different content delivered in different ways can be more beneficial for you. So knowing this can improve your study space. So for example, if you are a kinesthetic learner, now nobody said that they were a kinesthetic learner, but maybe some of the people in our audience are. If you're a kinesthetic learner, it's nice to have a space to study where you can stand up and move around and actually, walk or sit on one of those stability balls where you can move around a little bit. This can help you process your information. Okay, so that's something to consider. Now, if you are a visual learner, like I think two of the people in our audience are, it's nice to have a larger desk where you can lay out all your materials and see everything that you need to see. A whiteboard is also a really great idea to have if you're a visual learner, because that way you can use different colored markers and just make your content more visual. Now, if you are an auditory learner like me, if it's possible, it would be good for you to have a study space where it's quiet, because other sounds might be distracting for you. And if you can't, a pair of sound isolating earphones are also really useful. A tool that you can use if you're an auditory learner too, and this is something that I've done myself, is use your cell phone as a recorder. And if you are learning something, you can read out your summaries and record them so that you can listen to them later. And that can be a really helpful tool. And finally, we have the readers and the writers. And honestly, if you are a reading and writing learner, the traditional method of schooling is pretty conducive to your learning style. As long as you have notebooks and paper and space for books, you're going to be okay. So, I'm taking a look at the chat. Does anybody have any questions about what I've said so far? Okay, and for those of you who are just joining me, my name is Natalie. I'm an instructor at Dalhousie, and this workshop is all about 5 strategies for effective online learning. And so far, we've mentioned knowing your learning platform, such as Blackboard or Brightspace, like at Dalhousie. Secondly, we have establishing a study space that is good for your learning style. And then we had establishing our study space in general to make sure that we can share our space appropriately with the people around us. Now, let's take a look at our first one. Pardon me, our next one. Give me a quick moment. I have my slides on my phone. And our next one, number 4, is communicating effectively online. Now, the issue that I'm sure we've all encountered with communicating online is that there's no body language. There's not that many visual cues. So sometimes our message gets misunderstood because people can't see our faces. And even though when you're in an online class, you can share your video of your face, a lot of students in the class just don't do this, maybe because of weak internet connections or just overall shyness. So when you're in an online course, a lot more effort needs to go into communication. So it's a good thing to remember an initialism called WRITE, W-R-I-T-E. Now the W stands for warmth. Because people can't see you smile when they read your message, you need to make sure that your message is extra warm. So be extra nice. Another good way is to use those emojis. If you're just in a group chat with your class, use emojis to make sure that people understand your message. Now, if you're writing a more formal email, no emojis. But for just day-to-day messaging and chatting with your classmates, emojis can be really helpful. Now, the next thing is R, W-R, be responsive. That means returning messages quickly and regularly, okay? The letter I is to be inquisitive. If you're unsure of something, always ask a question first. Don't just assume, because again, a lot of information can get lost when you're studying online and not face-to-face. So you have to make the effort to ask those questions yourself. Now the T in WRITE stands for tentative, which means sending messages that begin with I rather than you. So if you have a misunderstanding with an instructor or with someone in your class, talk about how you feel as opposed to targeting them for what they did, okay? It's always good to give the other person the chance to explain themselves before blaming them. Misunderstandings can happen more frequently when you're learning online. Now, finally, W-R-I-T-E, E stands for being empathetic. So you always want to respect other people's time, feelings, and privacy when you're composing your messages. Now, we've made it to the 5th part of our strategies for effective online learning, and it's a pretty big one. So number 5 is making connections with your course and your classmates. So in an online learning environment, being a part of the class and getting involved really takes self-motivation. However, the effort is truly worth it, as making connections with classmates and participating are two significant indicators of success in online learning. So being connected to your online learning environment means having a sense of belonging to your community of online classmates. And in short, it means you're expanding your circle of support. So, the benefits of making connections, and this just means actually communicating with the people in your class and the instructors in your class. The first benefit is that it helps you develop deeper learning. So deeper learning happens when you learn collaboratively with other people. So when you do group work, and group work truly is possible in an online class, but sometimes it's really easy to just turn your camera off and turn your microphone off and not connect with people. But that eliminates your opportunities for deeper learning. It's always good to bounce ideas off of other people when you're learning a new concept, and it does help you learn better. Now, the second thing is, give me a moment. It increases your motivation and decreases your social isolation. So when you know that people around you are doing the same thing as you are, maybe having the same struggles as you are, it makes you feel like part of the group, and that motivates you more. The third is that making connections encourages help seeking. So if you haven't really met your instructor before, it might make you feel shyer about asking for help. But if you've made an effort to speak to your instructor, speak to your classmates, it takes away that nervousness because you know that they're not scary people. You know that they're just human behind a computer screen, and it'll make you more comfortable if you are struggling with something. It'll make you more likely to ask for help, which obviously leads to success in your course. And the final point, the final benefit of making connections is that it decreases anxiety. And that's kind of connected with the help seeking. So it'll make you feel less nervous about making comments, asking questions. Now, we're talking about how important it is to make connections, but online, how do we do it? Well, the thing is, that's nice, is that there are actually a lot more ways to make connections in an online class than there are in a face-to-face class. Because in a face-to-face class, you're just talking. Your teacher puts you in groups. But when you're in an online class, there's all those different apps that you can use, that you use every day. There's your live class. There's a lot of different ways. So the first one, and we do this a lot at Dalhousie, is to interact with your course discussion forums. So maybe once a week or once every couple of days, your instructor will put a discussion question up in Brightspace as a discussion posting. And you can interact with this in a number of ways. To start, you can just read other people's responses. But as you get more comfortable with it, you can add your own responses, you can respond to other people's comments, and you'll be able to compare your experiences and your opinions that way. And as a result, you'll feel more connected to your course and the people who are in it with you. Another thing that you can do is just create a class group chat using whatever app is accessible to all the people in the different countries who are in your class. A lot of people use WeChat. You just add everybody to the group and you can share content, share notes, and usually the teacher isn't involved in these group chats, so you can say what you really feel in those chats. And then finally, you can consider creating an online study group, which can be really fun because you can use Teams or Zoom and just have a video chat while you study or do a project together. So those are 3 ways to make connections. Now, making connections with the people in your class is not the only way that you should connect. You also need to connect with your course itself. So, and your online learning platform also. And the first and easiest way to connect with your course is just to log in. Anytime that you log in, Brightspace and other platforms instantly give you notifications. They tell you if an assignment's due, if a quiz is coming up, if there's a new discussion posting. So when you log in, you're instantly getting these notifications and it's reminding you of things and helping you schedule your academic life. Another way to connect with your online course is to view the lectures live. A lot of teachers will record their lectures, and it might be an option to watch that lecture later. However, it is a great idea to watch them live because that way you can ask your professor questions in real time, you can hear what other students are asking, and it's just more of an interactive experience. Another way to participate is to use your professor's office hours. Most professors will have at least an hour or 2 per week where you can schedule a meeting and have a chat about your progress. And this is something that you would do face-to-face. It's something that's done just as easily when you're online. And then finally, like I mentioned before, those discussion forums. Discussion forums are a really great way to get your feet wet and get used to interacting with your course and and the content of the course. So, we are running short on time, but we finished. So to summarize, doing online courses is going to be a big change, and it definitely comes along with challenges, but they're not unsurmountable. As long as you realize what those challenges are and you have a plan for how you're going to stay self-motivated, you're going to be fine and it'll be a great experience. So the 5 strategies that I mentioned today were: first, knowing your online learning platform, establishing a study space with the other people in mind, creating a study space that's suited to your learning style, communicating effectively online, and finally, making connections with both your course and your classmates. So, I'm taking a look at the chat over here. Does anybody have any final questions before we end this live video? All right, well, thank you so much for coming, everybody. And I wish you all good luck with your first online course or your second online course, whenever that happens to be.